My name is Elizabeth Fontaine, and my last name is spelled Fontaine.
You may proceed.
Thank you. How are you presently employed?
I work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And what is your job with the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
I'm a physical scientist forensic examiner in the latent print operations unit.
And how long have you been employed in that capacity in that unit?
For 4.5 years.
And what what is your education that led you to that job?
I have a Master's of Science degree in Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, with a concentration in Forensic Drug Chemistry from the University of Florida, located in Gainesville, Florida. I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in Microbiology with a minor in Chemistry from the University of Rhode Island, located in Kingston, Rhode Island.
And have you had any training within the FBI that led you to your present position?
Yes. I successfully completed an approximate 18-month training program in the latent print unit at the FBI. During that training program, I learned about the biology of friction-rich skin, how to record known prints, how to properly handle and process evidence for the detection of latent prints, and how to actually conduct comparisons. During my training, I processed hundreds of items of evidence and completed approximately 75,000 comparisons. Towards the end of my training, I worked cases under the supervision of a certified examiner, and upon completion of the training program, I successfully completed the FBI's certification exam in the area of friction ridge analysis.
And when did you become, is there a point when you become an examiner that's permitted to do examinations after your training is over?
After I was certified in July of 2008, following that period, I was on what we call a probationary period for 6 months. This is when a supervisor looks over your work for a period of time, and after that 6-month period is completed, you are able to work cases without having someone check over your work completely. However, our work still goes through a technical and administrative review process.
Now, is the period of what you call probation, is that standard for all new examiners?
Yes, it is.
So it's not like a punishment for anything?
No.
Okay. Now, I'll direct your attention to December of 2008 and ask if you had occasion to examine some evidence submitted in the investigation of the death of one Caylee Marie Anthony.
Yes, I did.
And was that in the form of some duct tape that was reported to you as having been obtained from the remains?
Yes, it was 3 pieces of duct tape.
All right. Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit for identification KN. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Let me show you State's Exhibit KN for identification and ask if you recognize it.
Yes, I do, and I know I do because my initials appear on the white tag on the outer packaging of the bag.
Right. And is this the bag that you were sent which contained the duct tape?
Yes, and again, I know this because my initials appear on one of the seals of me indicating that I sealed this package.
Thank you. This time, Your Honor, I move into evidence State's Exhibit KN for identification.
What says the defense?
The package, Your Honor.
You may. We received an evidence that states numbered
302.
Now, Ms. Fontaine, when you got this item of evidence, did you have to go any efforts to separate the 3 pieces, or were they already separated?
May I refer to my case notes, please?
You may.
Your Honor, may I refer to my notes?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Upon initial receipt of the evidence, how I receive evidence is a item of evidence receives a Q if it is a questioned item. Other items receive K if it is a known item. In this case, those items, those 3 pieces of duct tape were received to me as Q items, and I refer to them as Q62, Q63, and Q64. Q62 upon initial receipt was a separate piece of tape, and Q63 and Q64 were initially received on top of each other or stuck together.
Did you have to use any efforts to separate them?
I actually did not separate those 2 pieces of tape that were stacked or stuck together. An examiner in the trace evidence unit did this.
All right. Did you, however, later examine them separately?
I examined them stuck together and separately.
Now, can you describe first Q62 as far as its size and its condition, according to, and if you need to refer to your notes, refresh your recollection, go right ahead.
My notes indicate that Q62, Q63, and Q64 were each approximately 6 to 8 inches in length.
All right. And what was their condition as far as, did you note that they are weathered or that they look new, old, any of those observations?
Okay. I have indicated in my notes that the glue was almost gone and that the duct tape was no longer sticky. And the glue had migrated along with the strings or fibers within the duct tape towards one end and had formed a glob of glue and fibers. Basically, the duct tape was no longer a sticky type tape, but rather the plastic with the glue and strings hanging on to the rest of the plastic.
So had some of the strings separated from the plastic or vinyl part of the tape?
That's correct.
Now, did you subject Q62, Q63, and Q64 to examination in an effort to find possible latent fingerprints?
Yes, I did.
Now, were you given a history of where this tape was found, under what conditions?
I was told that the tape was found on the remains and that it was found in an area that was periodically subjected to flooding.
Exception?
She is an expert, Your Honor, and she is permitted to base her opinion on hearsay, and I'm going to ask her opinion in a moment.
Overruled.
All right. Now, based upon the history you were given, did you have an expectation of any probability of finding latent fingerprints?
Speculation.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
Evidence that is subjected to environmental factors, I would not expect latent prints to be found. This is because latent prints are very fragile and are comprised of oil, sweat, or similar substances. However, I do not go into an examination process if I have the thought that I will not expect to see latent prints. It does not change my examination of that item of evidence. My process and my examination, regardless of what I think the end outcome will be, does not change.
Now, when examining Q62, were you able to find any latent fingerprints?
No, I was not.
In examining Q63, were you able to find any latent fingerprints?
No, I was not.
And in examining Q64, were you able to find any latent fingerprints?
No, I was not.
During your examination of these exhibits, did you note in your notes something that you did see?
Yes, I did.
We would renew our previous motions and objections.
Renewed objections will be overruled.
And on which exhibit did you see this item we're going to talk about?
Let me refer to my notes, please.
Please do.
It was on Q63.
And what did you see?
During my examination of Q63, an outline of a heart appeared in one of the corners on the edge of that piece of duct tape.
Now, what process were you using when you noticed this artifact?
I was using an alternate light source called RUVIS, which is an acronym that stands for Reflective Ultraviolet Imaging System. This process is utilized after superglue, and it helps visualize a three-dimensional object or an object that has different depths or dirt or not a flat surface. It also helps visualize reflective surfaces. It helps minimize the glare and any bumps or distortion that flat surface may have. This alternate light source helps make that a flat, non-reflective image.
Is that process used normally to raise otherwise invisible fingerprints?
It helps eliminate any background that the object that you're processing for the development of latent prints may have in interfering with properly visualizing latent prints.
Now, can you give us any further description of what this shape looked like? About how big was it?
It was approximately the size of a dime. And the best way to illustrate what I saw was if you were to wear a Band-Aid for an extended period of time and eventually remove that Band-Aid, you have that glue or debris surrounding the outer edges of that Band-Aid. The outline of the heart resembled that glue or debris that if you had been wearing a Band-Aid for an extended period of time. However, rather than in the shape of a Band-Aid, it was in the shape of a heart.
Now, upon seeing that, did you believe it to be of any special significance in the case at the time you saw it?
At the time, no.
Did you note it in your file?
I noted it in my file, and I notified the appropriate people involved in the case.
Did you also call over a supervisor to view it as well?
Yes, the supervisor was with me that evening and also observed the heart shape on the duct tape as well.
Sustain. Motion to strike the last answer will be granted.
Thank you. Without saying what she may have said, did she come over and view it in your presence?
Yes, she did.
All right. Now, did you photograph it?
No, I did not.
Why not?
My job is to process evidence and examine evidence for the detection of latent prints, to then take those latent prints and compare them to known prints, other latent prints, or to search them in the FBI's fingerprint database. When I observe something that is unexpected, I note it and continue on with my examination. The FBI does not require photographing of unexpected items to be done. In this case, when I observed the unexpected item, I continued on with my examination. And upon completion of processing and examining the duct tape, I did attempt to photograph the heart. However, at that point in time, it was no longer visible on the object.
Now, what had you done to the object between when you first saw it and when you... Let me stop. Did you later come back and photograph it based upon discussions with law enforcement that it might actually be something important?
No, I did.
Overall.
Go ahead.
No, I did not.
Right. Why did you go back and attempt to photograph it later?
I had completed my examination and felt that at that point it was appropriate to attempt a photograph.
What processes had you used on the tape in order to try and lift prints between seeing it and then not being able to find it again?
I conducted an alternate dye stain known as RAM. Each of those letters stand for a different dye stain. RAM is a strong solvent that colors superglue so that when I can visualize white superglue prints on white objects or objects that have a reflective property to them underneath an alternate light source such as a laser. This allows... I'm sorry. Sure. RAM is a dye stain that dye stains white superglue prints. This dye stain enables a fingerprint examiner to look at white fingerprints on white objects and also on reflective objects by utilizing alternate light sources such as a laser. The print, rather than being white underneath the alternate light source, will then glow an orange type color. I used that examination as well as black powder, which is the typical black powder as you see on CSI with the brush. And I also used alternate black powder, which is the same black powder mixed with a solution to process anything that is sticky or glue-like on the items of evidence.
But when you went back to try and photograph the whatever it was, you couldn't find it anymore.
That is correct.
Now, do you know what that artifact was?
Other than stating that it was in the shape of a heart, approximately the size of a dime, I cannot go further.
And do you have any idea how it got there, when it got there, who put it there, or why?
No, I do not.
No further questions.
May it please the court. Good morning, Ms. Fontaine.
Good morning.
The items that you were given to inspect, you were given them second, correct? Q62 to Q64?
What do you mean by second?
Who was the first person from the FBI to receive these items?
All items of evidence are received in our evidence control unit as a standard policy and protocol within our unit, and they conduct an inventory. After the 3 pieces of duct tape went to our evidence control unit, it did, according to my chain of custody, prior to me going to the trace evidence unit. However, how the evidence went from the evidence control unit to the trace unit is not detailed in my case records.
Okay. I apologize. I'm not sure I understood that.
That's okay.
Okay. First, it's collected at the scene, right?
Correct.
And then Orange County Sheriff's Office has it, right?
I do not know the travel path of these 3 pieces of tape other than once they were received in the FBI laboratory.
Now, it goes to Tampa first, does it not?
Again, I don't know the path until it enters into the laboratory.
Okay. And then it got to the evidence control unit.
That's correct.
Okay. These are the people who kind of distribute which evidence goes to where, correct?
That is correct. And they also conduct an inventory of evidence received.
They're the ones inventorying everything and saying, okay, this is going to go here first and this here second, and so on and so forth.
That is correct.
Okay. So evidence control unit got it, right?
Yes.
Then it was taken to your division, correct?
Prior to me receiving it, it was received in the trace evidence unit. That is where I received the 3 pieces of duct tape from.
And the trace evidence unit searches it for trace evidence, correct?
Upon their initial receipt of the items of evidence, they contacted myself so that I can conduct a visual examination on the items. This is typically done because latent prints are generally latent print unit generally receives evidence last. So we work closely with other units so that if there's any fingerprints that may be seen visually, we can photographically capture them then rather than waiting for it to be received in our unit at a later point in time.
Okay, so now we're at trace evidence unit.
Correct.
And they call you over while they are conducting their examination.
That's correct.
And they're searching for hair.
I assume so, yes.
Fibers.
Again, I assume so.
Anything that would assist a jury in determining what's going on with this piece of evidence, correct?
And again, yes, I assume so.
All right. Now, then it goes to you.
Yes.
Okay. And the very first thing you did you start with Q62?
I initially started, I don't exactly remember if I started with 1, 2, or 3. Since there were 2 stacked together and 1 was separate, I'm sure I started with the one that was separate first, which was Q62.
Okay. So you're the second division, so to speak, to get this, or the second person to get this type of evidence, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you got Q62, you then began, what was the first process you did for fingerprinting?
Initially, when I received the 3 pieces of duct tape after being notified by the trace evidence unit, I conducted a visual examination. This is very basic by holding the items of evidence and maybe rotating or tilting it slightly for different lighting to see if any latent prints are visible without any chemicals or forensic processes.
And this helps you in your normal course. This is something you're trained to do because this often allows you to pick up latent prints, correct?
It is always the first step in our examination process, yes.
Okay, what's the second step?
The second step is a laser, which is just like you see on TV or the laser pointers. It's very similar to that. It's at a wavelength that allows us to visualize or potentially visualize latent prints.
And the wavelength of the laser is what allows you to see any types of items that may or may not be on the tape, correct?
Yes, a certain percentage of the population has fingerprints that naturally fluoresce, given the lotions that they use on a daily basis or the items that they handle. So we look at second look at evidence using a laser to see if there's any naturally fluorescing fingerprints.
Okay, and then what's the third step you take?
This third step is UV or ultraviolet. It's very similar to the laser. It's just at a different frequency, again, to visualize any potentially naturally occurring fluorescing fingerprints.
And these different frequencies are what allows you to sometimes pick up on latents that the previous alternating light sources do not, correct?
That is correct. Our processes are in a sequence that allows us to optimize the visualization of latent prints.
And then what is step 4?
In this case, step 4, the items of evidence actually went back to the trace evidence unit for them to do a full collection of their evidence that they needed to do.
And then at that point, that's when they may take out any fibers or anything that's there.
That is correct.
Okay. Then it came back to you, did it not?
That is correct.
And what happened when you got it on that occasion?
When I got all 3 pieces of tape back the second time, I redid the first 3 steps that I just told you about: visual examination, laser examination, and ultraviolet light examination. This was done because Q63 and Q64 were once stacked on top of each other, and now they no longer were.
And that was disconnected by the trace evidence unit.
Yes,
Okay. A completely different person.
correct.
Okay. So now we're at, I believe, step 6.
Sure. Step 6 is super glue. And I'm sure if you've seen CSI, you see them stick the tube in the car and the white fumes super glue the interior of the car. It's the same thing, just on a different scale, and all 3 pieces of tape were super glued.
Okay. And how does that assist you in being able to lift fingerprints?
Super glue is attracted to moisture. So when the evidence is superglued it is superglued in a humidity chamber, which means we add moisture to the air within that chamber. That moisture is attracted to any latent prints that may be on that item of evidence. That moisture then attracts the superglue to that moisture and eventually allows the superglue to harden, making almost like a coating or a shell over that latent print.
Okay. And then what did you do after that?
The next after superglue was
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. That's step 7, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
The next step after superglue is RUVIS, that reflective ultraviolet imaging system that I spoke of previously.
Now, the RUVIS system is fairly advanced, is it not?
I don't know what you mean by advanced.
Let me rephrase that. For the layperson, describe to us what RUVIS is.
Sure. The RUVIS system is an ultraviolet light that is shown down through a filter and a camera onto the object. This camera then presents an image onto a computer screen. It's very similar to the one next to me, and it allows you to visualize the object. So you're actually not looking at the object, but you're looking at the monitor while you visualize what the RUVIS is doing. And the RUVIS, as I spoke of earlier, shines down onto the object, helping eliminate any reflective properties that the item may have, and also helps take away the 3D effect that may be on that item as a result of debris or dirt or crinkles in the actual material.
And the filter is what allows for that to occur, correct?
I'm not sure how it works exactly. I know when all put together, that's how it works.
Okay. And that comes up on a screen. It's also blown up for you. Somewhat, I don't want to use like a microscope, but basically enlarges it for you, does it not?
Yes, since the imaging system, the image is portrayed on a monitor very similar to this size, the object that is visualized through the imaging system is enlarged to fit onto the monitor screen.
Okay. And that is step 8.
I guess, yes.
Okay. Anything else after that?
After the RUVIS, the next step is the RAM, where is that alternate dye stain that I spoke about, and the final process is black powder.
Let me stop you there. Explain RAM for us.
Sure. RAM is a dye stain that is used on top of superglue. The superglue I use is the same superglue that you guys all have at your house. It dries white, clear type color. So sometimes it is hard to actually visualize that cloudy white type print that may be on an object. So we utilize a dye stain, and at the FBI, we mostly utilize RAM. This dye stain stains that superglue rather than a white color. It gives it a fluorescent properties to it, so that I can utilize the ultraviolet light and a laser to help visualize that latent print, and now it will glow orange.
Okay. And then after the RAM, that's after step 9, what happens on step 10?
In this case, step 10 for me was alternate black powder. This is regular black powder mixed with a solution, which is then painted onto any glue or sticky substance that may be on the item. Typically, step 9 or alternate black powder is utilized only when there is a glue type substance. It is not a normal procedure on items of this type.
And that was your final test, correct?
No, I have one more.
Oh, okay.
The final step was black powder. This is the traditional black powder that you've seen on where they dust and they powder with a brush on the counters. This is just black powder that is applied.
And why is that used? I'm sorry if you can throw that in there as
fine.
well.
Latent prints, because they are comprised of oil, sweat, or similar substances, when you touch an object, you leave behind a fragmentary reproduction of your friction ridge arrangement that leaves behind oil or sweat. So when you powder, and you all seen them when they do on CSI, they take the brush and they... I'm sorry. When you powder and you move the brush between your fingers over the latent print that is comprised of oil, sweat, or similar substances, that powder is attracted to and adheres to, in a sense, to the moisture of that latent print.
And 11 is where we conclude.
I've lost count, so I guess yes.
Okay. Now, after you've done this, you of course do this on both sides, correct?
The alternate black powder is only applied to the glue type area, so that was a specified area that was applied to.
Okay, but all the other steps were on both sides of the tape.
That is correct.
And that's because someone could touch both sides of the tape with either finger, correct?
Yes, I don't go into processing an item of evidence with any expectations. So all of our processes and all of our examinations is conducted on the entirety of the object.
Now that's how you went through Q62.
And Q63 and Q64.
About to go there. So Ms. Fontaine, then you went to Q63, and don't worry, I won't make you repeat all that stuff again.
Okay.
But you started on Q63. Now I recall in your testimony, you were very specific that you didn't want to say any more than what you saw, right?
That is correct.
And you can't speculate any further than that, correct?
That is correct.
Now, Q63, when you saw this small item, it was just something visual, correct?
It was something that I visualized in the RUVIS system, or that reflective ultraviolet imaging system.
And that was step 7.
I don't remember.
Okay. And then after you had completed step 11, you came back and it was no longer there.
Upon completion of processing the item of evidence, it was no longer visible, yes.
Okay. So, however, when you saw that item, this was after you had gotten it, or after you had gotten it back from the trace evidence unit for the second time, correct?
All of my processes were done after the examination of the trace evidence unit.
Okay, so it goes, so you have something that is received at the FBI, it goes to trace evidence, you're there, you do a visual there, then it comes to you, correct?
Correct.
Then it goes back to trace evidence unit, correct?
Sustain.
And then you get it back and that's where you started step 1 through 11, correct?
I restarted steps 1, 2, and 3, and then introduced 4 through the end.
Okay. And after you received something, you actually did a report in this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and in the report, you indicate that Q62 through Q64 had no fingerprints whatsoever.
That is correct.
And this is including your thorough examination of each piece backwards and forwards, correct?
Yes.
And you follow, or you're aware of this item of evidence because it's an item of evidence that you may testify in this case, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What I mean is, you're aware that the item of evidence, after you're finished with it, goes back to evidence control and then probably to another division.
That is correct.
Okay. And you're aware that the item was later contaminated by another member, weren't it?
Hearsay. May we approach?
You may. Objection sustained. You may continue.
Ms. Fontaine, after you conclude your examination, you just fill out a report of what you know and what you don't know, correct?
I fill out a report with what my conclusions are.
Okay. And your conclusions when inspecting Q62, Q63, and Q64 was after doing a complete and total workup using multiple different techniques, you were not able to find any fingerprints on either piece of duct tape.
That is correct.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
You said that Q63 and Q64 were stacked.
That is correct.
Which was on top?
According to my,
Overruled.
Q63 was on top of Q64.
No further questions.
May the witness be excused.
Subject to recall. As far as the state is concerned.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Your Honor, as we'd indicated earlier, this, our only other witnesses we have, the next witnesses available will not be here till tomorrow morning. So we have no further witnesses to present this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We apologize for the inconvenience, but schedules couldn't be adjusted.
The witnesses for tomorrow will be here tomorrow when?
They will, I believe they arrive at 11, so they should be here and ready to testify at 1:30 in the court's normal afternoon schedule.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me give you an update as far as I know what's going on, and that is subject to change. Based upon what I know and what the lawyers think may happen, is that the state may wrap up their presentation tomorrow afternoon or sometime Wednesday. Just depends, but they should conclude their presentation tomorrow or sometime by noon on Wednesday. We had anticipated the defense starting on Thursday, but they are trying to accelerate that process to start on Wednesday, if possible, but we will know because you got to shift some travel plans and run through those logistics with other witnesses. So far, we are ahead of schedule. Depending on the length of the defense's presentation, and we will have some flavor of that by Saturday, we should have an idea that maybe the following week, and I use the word maybe, and we will recalculate that after we look at it. Probably I don't want to make a guesstimate on that until Saturday, but I kind of think that maybe by the end of next week, we will conclude all of the evidence in this case and get you deliberating, hopefully, the 25th or the 27th. But that is all subject to change, so don't hold me exactly to that. That is my best. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to recess for the balance of the day. That may put a crimp in our plans as far as your lunch, but they will go through with your lunch plans. I don't know what your lunch plans were today. And we will see you tomorrow afternoon. Can't we get started at 1 o'clock, Mr. Ashton, rather than 1:30?
We'll do our best to do that. If they arrive on schedule, then we should be able to do that. If not, I'll let you
Okay,
know.
keep us apprised of any change in plans, but we will restart tomorrow at 1 p.m. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state or the defense,
Not for the state, no.
other than the renewed request for the instruction that you've asked me to give that I've denied?
None from the defense, Judge.
Okay, we'll be in recess to 1 p.m. tomorrow.
I represented to the court, and we have no indication otherwise.
Pardon, I didn't hear the last part of it.
I have no indication that that has changed in any way, shape, or form. What you were told Saturday and previously are the same.
Thank you, sir.